Can anybody hear me? Is that loud? Can you hear me, Michelle? No?
Yeah, they're working.
Working? Woo.
Try to make it very efficient. That would be a good thing. That's valid. Did everyone get work out of the update? Did everyone have one of each or just one? Did everyone have one of each? Did you run from your house then? Okay. We'll bring this up. It's gonna be a soccer player. It's gonna be a soccer. Coming up so big. All right, it is 6 o'clock. We will start the meeting with roll call.
Mr. West?
Here.
Mr. Nolan? Miss Reynolds? Here. Miss Flint? Here. Miss Watkins? Here. Mr. LaTurner?
Here.
Miss Jordan? Here.
If you will stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first up we have meeting minutes of 2/7 and fire department meeting minutes of 2/10. Do you have any questions on the minutes? We have a motion by Linda Watkins to approve the minutes and place on file.
I'll second.
Second by Emily Jordan. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, we have appropriations of $72,115.62. Any questions on the bills? We have a motion by Linda Watkins to pay the bills. Second by Nancy Flint. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Candace has to leave, be out of here by about 6:40. So we're going to kind of move stuff around just so we are efficient with her time. First, and I'll let Candace talk about it, but I got an email from Mads, who is the owner of Jordan Disposal. And it sounds like they're refinancing. Was that about right? Refinancing the landfill. And so he basically just sent a deal that the bank had sent him and wanted me to sign. So I sent it to Renee and to Candace and to Josh. So are there any issues?
It doesn't really have to do with the city, and it's not going to come from the city. It's not really going to affect us. I think Ashley had a good question. If they default on their loan, will it affect us? Would it come on us? It wouldn't, because it's not co-signing. It's just pledging their contract with us to operate as collateral for their loan. So it's good. There's a little bit, maybe some wording. The original contract is more of an operating agreement, and what the bank prepared is called a lease agreement. So I think if we can clarify that with the bank, change that a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to change, what their original operating agreement was, just
it
to
would be the
suit them.
bank. Yeah, we can't change our agreement because
Right.
we're locked into that. The bank is calling it a lease agreement, like they're leasing this
Right.
from us.
They're not really leasing it from us.
Right. So we just need to kind of clarify that a little bit. So, but we didn't want to sign it without what's going on, right?
Sure.
About, I think we can give her permission to sign it after we make it some tweaks.
Are you all okay with that as long as the verbiage?
No, it's not like co-signing, nothing like that. It's just they're pledging their contract. If they default on that, I really don't see how they're gonna collect, but that's not our problem, so.
Yeah, I guess, like I said before, my only stick on it would be is if, they can't change the language from lease to, or from operating agreement to lease.
And I don't know.
That
if they-
talks about,
Yeah, the bank might not even know that.
if
Right.
they
Yeah,
have that
yeah.
original contract, like,
sure. Just as long as they're aware of that and that doesn't change.
Kind of makes it sound like they're leasing property, but
Right.
maybe it's what's happening. So.
Right.
I don't see it's going to be an issue because I think it's just the contract's the same. They're looking at the money in. So I think it's fine, but I don't think a lot of problem with that change. But it will bring it up.
Do we need that in a motion?
It wouldn't hurt. I just kind of want you guys to be aware of what's happening in case we hear something.
I would say, approval for signature on the contingency that the verbiage meets our current contract.
Okay, so I'll make that motion.
After modifications.
After you change it. So I'll make that motion.
All right. So we have a motion by Emily Jordan to proceed with signing this. And it's not even a contract, it's just a paperwork from the bank. As long as the wording is changed to match what our operating agreement is and Candace approves all that. We have a second by Joe West. All in favor? Any opposed?
Only other thing with me, I think, is there was a meeting for the to change the pay scale. We talked about at last meeting that some of the high ends of I think maybe 7 positions or so needed to be raised. So
Yeah, there were a few, so we had a personnel committee meeting and there were a few areas that the numbers were kind of reverted back to the old scale. We fixed those, made recommendations for that, and we also readdressed a few other items or positions on the list so that in the next 2 to 3 years, as pay goes to increase, it'll be ready for that. It's not to say that those scales will be, they're already hiring their staff in at what they're hiring them at, and there's some positions that aren't even filled right now.
I don't have a copy.
It should
Oh,
be in this right
Here's the
here.
new,
And
there you go. Take a look
This
at
is
that.
the new one.
And here's the old one, so if you want to compare it. And some of the positions were nearing the maximum of that salary. And so we needed to make sure we had room in there, like the department head type positions. If we just deemed that we needed to increase their wages, it would fit the scale. The scale would be prepared for it.
and we also removed a couple of things, like the dispatcher line. We removed that one because she doesn't use the dispatcher anymore. She's not a dispatcher. She's a office associate. So we just kind of removed that one as well.
Right.
There was another one that we were
just-
talking about trying to figure out how to word it.
the cemetery sexton. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we just eliminated the lateral meter reading position that was part of that. We just
Oh, and it was the
Titled
assistant fire.
cemetery sexton.
It was the assistant fire truck driver, because you don't have an assistant fire truck driver anymore. That was the
Yeah, we
other thing.
eliminated that too. So that was it. And the building inspector.
Yes, building inspector too.
Because we third party that out now.
So I have a couple questions on it.
Sure.
On the patrol, like the patrol officer, changing the minimums. Like I know we're raising the maximum
Right.
for future reference a couple years in advance. But like, would there never be an instance where you would have a patrol officer that was just out of training where you would want to pay them less than $16 an hour? You start them at 16 already? Okay. And then the other,
Below most other.
Yeah.
okay, the lifeguard, changing it to $10 an hour, but we're not changing the pool manager. Do lifeguards work 20 hours a week? Is what my understanding was.
I don't know if
About
they even
20
get
hours a
20
week.
I don't think they even get.
Really?
Because you're going to make, I mean, even at 20, a minimum of 20 hours a week, they're going to make the same amount as a pool manager who's in charge of everything. So I think that needs looked at. Because a pool manager is 210 a week.
I didn't even see the pool manager on here.
It's on the back page.
Yeah.
Swimming
They
pool
can go up
manager.
to 390.
Yeah, they can go
Up to, yeah. I just think, but I think your
That's
minimum
below
needs,
scale,
your
right.
minimum needs to be in line with your minimum here, I think is what I'm saying.
Yeah. It needs to
So, because if you hire,
Commensurate.
yeah,
I got it.
Make that change. Yeah. Make a motion to adopt with the change of.
Yeah.
That one minimum.
something.
I'm gonna agree with that.
So what would be your suggestion, Chastity?
I don't, just to make it in line with the, so you're doing $10 an hour for the minimum there, which would be $200 for, I mean, if they're working 20 hours a week, so two, and you're only paying them $10 more an hour to work 35 plus. So, I mean, I don't have a recommendation.
And it's really kind of like right where they're at. So 350 is where we start them at, right?
But we,
On top of the 35 hours a week? I mean, it's good to know you're not starting them at 210 is all I'm saying. But that 210 needs to be in line with the $10 an hour at 200. Like, I don't know what that
Right.
that wage is, but it needs to be in line. Right. To where if you hired a new one in at 210, you weren't paying lifeguards 200.
yes, it was.
And then they make money off the
So,
concession.
You don't now.
They
They
don't
used
now.
to.
So you can pay them less because they made their income by getting concessions. They changed that.
So
do the minimum.
can we do the minimum since we typically start the pool manager out at 350? Because we've had, can we do something like change the minimum to 300? And then do the maximum at like 450? 450, 500? Is that something?
The other thing is we already have our pool budget.
Right.
You got to think about that too.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean that was done when we approved the budget.
Right.
in the fall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we just raised those last time.
I think it was more, we were trying to keep it in line with the seasonal worker. Isn't that what we were doing, is just keeping it in line with seasonal workers? Because last year, from what I was under the understanding was, we had a hard time hiring lifeguards and
Right.
keeping them because of the $8.
That was the argument.
And then you go to Joplin and they're starting out at like $9.45, $10 an hour for lifeguards who are trained and certified. So I think that was the argument, was we were trying to keep efficient lifeguards, good lifeguards here instead of losing them, because Baxter starts theirs out at 8, but we were trying to.
Mhm.
The conversation started because it's in the same line item as seasonal employees for like the cemetery. We've never started debiting them.
Right.
Even before I started debiting. So
So what if we split those up?
I start saying, can you not split
it
them?
might be better.
That's what I would do.
Okay, so maybe what, we split lifeguard out at, you wanna lower it back down to 8?
I call the other one the seasonal laborer.
And then seasonal, leave it at 10? And then we're gonna do the manager, we had a suggestion of 340. Is that good?
Well, do we need to change that now that we
If
left
you're
it
going
down?
back down to 8, then it's still in line, and I would leave it.
That's good. Okay. We can adopt that with those changes.
Those are great suggestions, by the way, Jeff.
I'll make the motion that we adopt the ordinance 2201.
All right, we have a motion by Emily Jordan to adopt ordinance 2201
With the changes.
with the changes we discussed.
I'll second that.
I have a second by Bob Laturner. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
So we did, in the personnel committee meeting, we did go through the employee and volunteer handbook. And the recommended changes in there, and we made a few recommendations in here as well. I guess the first one I can see on the list, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, is the holiday
Yes,
schedule,
yes.
which is on page 11. If you flip page 11 over and look on the back of it, it's got notes where we made some recommended changes to the holiday. And our recommendation was to add Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a paid holiday.
And then adding the fourth Friday in November to the handbook because it was passed, but it was never added to the handbook. The Friday after Thanksgiving. Right. It just never got put into the handbook, so that would just be adding it to the handbook. And then
And the other highlighted areas, these are just recommendations for the workers' compensation and employment insurance. That wasn't changed, we just basically agreed.
What page are you on?
What's that?
What page was that?
That is on 16, page 15 or 16. And the notes are on the,
the use of city,
Oh, is it
16
just where
right there.
it's all highlighted? Okay.
just to relay information on procedures for workers' comp.
and then page 19, Joe, with the hold harmless for the city equipment.
Right, we went back and forth on this quite a bit with the use of city equipment for personal use. I know this was a change that was put in probably a couple of years before I got on the council as well. And it was to protect the city. I do know that there were discussions that were brought up where, city members could be in a position to help a citizen of the town with city equipment, and would be the right thing to do. But the only way that you would be able to get around that would be to have some level of hold harmless to the city from that member that was seeking help from the city. That way, you give them an opportunity if the position or the situation brought itself up, would want to require that if we were able to do something like that, we would want to have a hold harmless agreement signed by the citizen before we rendered any kind of assistance in that area.
Is there a limit on that as far as where you're talking about equipment?
Right. I mean, we're not talking about, you know,
The fire truck.
No, I'm talking about, I mean, we loan our tools out to our volunteers.
well, that's another thing too. So here it is, right? That's great, right? It's a good opportunity for people to be able to share in the wealth, and it's like a socket, right? You need nobody carries a 1 3/4 socket, but hey, we got one. I'll loan it to you. But if for some reason that socket failed or whatever, you would have some culpability because it was your equipment that you loaned. But if you were to loan that piece of equipment and you had them sign a agreement to hold the fire department and the city of Galena harmless in the event that the socket failed, that's all I'm getting at. And that was the language that we were talking about adding to it. I know it it gets kind of sticky there when the original language that's in here just simply states use of city equipment for personal use is prohibited. And it's clean cut, nice, you know, but then it kind of ties the hands of these department heads to help.
We have like, I know the bigger equipment, but like the duct tape, if somebody's wanted to borrow, we required a waiver of liability, that doesn't need to be signed, but tools and small things, I'm sure.
We don't even own that
It's not even,
because of liability.
yeah.
Right.
It's not even,
I know we did several years
Several
back, and we
years,
had to sign a waiver. But you're right, a socket, something small would.
So that was a recommendation. Doesn't, I mean,
and this is still city people, right?
right?
Not letting anybody come off and borrow one of ours. Okay.
And then we didn't, the next item is the personnel files that needs to be added for informational purposes. We didn't change any of those. We just agreed. As same with the training and education and personnel data. Same deal. It's a addition to the, these were recommendations that were brought forth by, was it the state? Renee or Candace, was this the state recommendations that were? Okay. So yeah, those were changes that were recommended by the state and we just agreed. And then under the safety policy, and that would be page 31, it needs to be a change to reflect the current procedures for each department. And they're highlighted there. We didn't make any changes to that. We just agreed. And then on page 34, there are some changes in drug and alcohol testing policy levels that they were incorrect, I believe, on the last chart, if you will. So those changes are highlighted in yellow there on page 34. I'm trying to push through these. And then lastly, the telecommunications policy been added. And then if you go to page 50, all we did was simply just change the title of this agreement. It was just called the credit card agreement, or we just changed it to reflect employee issued credit card agreement. This is the agreement that an employee will sign if they have responsibility of having a city issued credit card to do purchases for the city. And that's the only thing we changed on that. And then lastly is the handbook acknowledgement form. And we agreed to that as well. Anybody have any questions on what we discussed or brought up? Or recommended?
and adopt the recommendations for the employee and volunteer.
Okay, we have a motion by Emily Jordan to accept the modifications to the employee and volunteer handbook. We have a second by Linda Watkins. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yeah, that exhausts everything that we did
Okay.
conducted on the personnel committee.
I think we need an executive session before Candace goes. Again, she has to leave in about 15 minutes, so we're gonna have to. Do you want it more than 5 minutes? Okay. For who would you like to keep in? And for what? For what purpose?
Auditor personnel, attorney-client, contracts, land acquisition.
Attorney client. Okay, so we have an executive session motion by Linda Watkins, 5 minutes from 6:25 to 6:30, keeping in Chief Charles, Josh, Renee, and Candace. Second by Emily Jordan. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?